There are days when the world feels pale, not sad, not painful, just muted. Like someone turned down the saturation on your reality. You wake up, sit at your desk, and everything looks familiar. Too familiar. The beige wall, the dull laptop, the gray cup. Nothing is wrong, but nothing is alive either. And slowly, without realizing it, your brain goes quiet. Not calm, quiet. As in disconnected, dimmed, idle. You check your calendar, you sip your coffee, you stare at the screen, but you feel like you're watching yourself from behind glass. This is what mental fatigue looks like when it doesn't scream. It just softens you until you forget what being sharp ever felt like. But what if the answer to this fog isn't more stimulation? What if the fix isn't louder music, stronger coffee, or another tab open? What if the shift begins with a single color? It sounds too small to matter, but the brain isn't logical, it's visual. And what you see constantly becomes what you feel, internally. Think of it this way. Walk into a room bathed in red light. You feel alert. Step into one, lit by warm gold. You exhale. Now imagine your everyday space. Gray, beige, washed out, white. What does that color palette whisper to your nervous system? Exactly. We often design our homes and workspaces for utility. We rarely design them for mental energy. And yet, the science is clear. Color is not decorative. It is neurological. Input. The eye perceives, the brain reacts, the mood shifts. Even a small injection of vibrant color acts as a stimulus. A signal to the brain. Wake up, something's different here. And difference sparks presence. Here's the beauty. You don't need to repaint the room. You don't need to buy new furniture or become a minimalist Pinterest god. You only need to interrupt the visual monotony. Start with something as small as a neon post-it, a bright coaster, or a blue notebook placed deliberately in your field of vision. Place it like a portal, a gateway back to now. And when your eyes meet that color, let it remind you you're not drifting. You're here. This moment isn't on repeat. This is new. Even your nervous system, that ancient, pattern-loving machine, perks up because it doesn't need a reason to pay attention. It just needs contrast. Think back to moments of real, mental energy, not anxiety, not adrenaline, but alertness. They likely didn't come during chaos. They came in moments where something subtle shifted. Maybe it was golden light on your kitchen table, or the way a child's red crayon stood out on a blank page. Maybe it was a scarf, a flower, a book spine that caught your eye in a quiet room. We remember in color because the mind wakes up to it. There's also an emotional side to this, a deeper story, because when you choose to bring color into your space, you are doing something radical. You're saying, I deserve a world that sparks me, not just one that contains me. You are taking agency over your visual environment, and through it, over your internal one. This is not vanity. This is nervous system care. The Stoics didn't talk about color theory, but they spoke endlessly about awareness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. But what if it also works in reverse? What if the thoughts become dyed with the color of your surroundings? You don't need to believe it, just try it. Tomorrow morning, before you open your laptop, place something colorful near your workspace. Let your eyes rest on it. Let your breath adjust to it. And as you work, let it remind your system. Not everything is gray. Not everything is flat. There is still wonder here, even on a Tuesday. And if anyone asks why you're suddenly putting a canary yellow folder on your shelf, or why you swapped your phone case for crimson, you can just smile. They don't need to understand. Because this habit isn't for them, it's for your return to clarity, to sensation, to self. One small, defiant pop of color at a time. Some things we feel before we understand. The air shifts. Something enters the space. Invisible, silent, yet unmistakable. It's not seen, it's not touched. But suddenly, You are awake. This is scent. Not a luxury, not background, but one of the oldest messengers the body has ever known. Before we had words, before we had logic, we had smell. The part of your brain that registers scent is also the part that stores emotion, memory, and danger. In fact, your olfactory system bypasses rational thinking entirely. It doesn't ask, "Do I like this?" It just whispers, "This is safe," or "This is not." And that whisper? It shapes your state. Now ask yourself, what does your room smell like? If you hesitate, that's the point. Most of us don't notice the air we live in. We adapt, we forget, we normalize. But your nervous system doesn't. It's still listening. And when the scent becomes too predictable, too flat, your brain slips into low alert mode. The space may feel comfortable, but comfort without novelty becomes sedation. So how do you return? How do you gently jolt your mind out of its quiet drift? You change the air. You don't need aromatherapy kits. You don't need incense and intention. You need one thing: interruption. Crack the window. Let unfamiliar air in. Cold, sharp, different. Take a citrus peel, twist it. Let the oil mist into the room. Light a match. Blow it out. Smell the burnt sulfur. Hold a shirt you wore on a good day. Inhale the memory. That's the practice, not pampering. Repatterning. You're not trying to feel good. You're trying to wake up. Science backs this, but so does instinct. In hospitals, peppermint is used to reduce fatigue. In classrooms, rosemary sharpens memory. In therapy, grounding with essential oils regulates breath, but you already knew this. Not intellectually, somatically. The scent of fresh bread, the smell of rain on hot concrete, the perfume that brings someone back from a decade ago. It's not nostalgia, it's access to something that felt vivid, alive, visceral. This is what you're doing when you change the scent. You're reactivating the body's memory of presence. Now imagine this. You enter your room. It smells new. Maybe mint, maybe cedar, maybe orange and smoke. And even before your thoughts register what's happening, your body leans forward. Your breath deepens. The autopilot brakes. You've arrived, not because of a thought, but because of a sensation. This is environmental leadership. You're no longer letting your surroundings dictate your mood unconsciously. You're curating cues that say, this is not yesterday. This is a moment. This is now. And your nervous system listens. The Stoics spoke of the need to return to presence throughout the day. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. But what if outside events includes the air? What if regaining power over your mind begins with a single, deliberate shift in what you smell? Try this tonight. Before bed, open the window. Let night air drift in, even if just for 2 minutes. Let your body feel that difference. Smell the dark. Smell the city. Smell the cold. Then close your eyes and notice. The thoughts are still there, but they feel less stuck. Something moved. And that movement came not from effort, but from environment. This is what scent does. It's a guide, a messenger, a bridge between unconscious drift and conscious return, and you, in changing it, become your own steward of your space, of your body, of your presence. So don't underestimate the invisible. The most powerful transformation is often the one one sees. Not a new job, not a new life, but a room that smells different, and a mind that because of it remembers. I am not asleep, I am here, and I can choose my atmosphere. We live in a world that never stops talking. Notifications, alerts, reminders, headlines, a constant hum, an endless scroll. Even silence isn't quiet anymore. It's filled with background noise. We wake up to pings. We walk with podcasts. We eat while watching. We fall asleep to the glow of another voice, another feed, another sound. And slowly, subtly, our minds forget how to be alone with themselves. Not because we've chosen that, but because we've never been taught what to do without input. There's a kind of fatigue that isn't about effort, it's about overexposure. When your brain is constantly consuming, it never gets to complete a thought. It's always reacting, always sifting, always scanning for the next thing. And even if the content is good, even uplifting, too much of anything without digestion becomes noise. The truth is simple and sobering. We are exhausted not from doing, but from absorbing. This is why the no-input hour exists. Not as punishment, but as protection. It's a boundary you draw around your inner world, a space where nothing gets in. Not music, not words, not messages, not opinions. Just stillness, just breath, just you. It doesn't need to look holy. You don't need a meditation pillow or incense. You can sit in a chair, stare at a ceiling, stand by a window, lie on the floor. You're not trying to clear your mind. You're simply letting your mind clear itself. Because here's what happens when input stops. Background thoughts rise. Half-finished emotions surface. Insights you've buried under stimulation start speaking again. And at first, it feels uncomfortable, even wrong. You'll want to check your phone. You'll want to fill the space. You'll want to escape the slowness, but if you wait, if you breathe through that first wave of discomfort, you'll arrive at something you haven't felt in weeks. Mental space. This isn't emptiness. It's room. Room to feel. Room to sense. Room to notice what's been underneath the noise all along. Your clarity is not gone. It's just buried under 10,000 headlines and algorithmic voices. But here, in the silence, it returns. Science confirms this. Neurologically, silence is where the brain resets. It completes cognitive loops. It reprocesses memory. It integrates emotion. Even 10 minutes of intentional stillness reduces cortisol, sharpens focus, and increases mood regulation. This isn't mindfulness fluff. This is maintenance. Just like your body digests food, your mind must digest life. Without that, you don't process reality, you just carry it. Heavy, unseen, unnamed. The Stoics would understand this. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. But how can we know what's imagined if we're never quiet enough to hear our real thoughts?" The no-input hour is a return to truth, to discernment, to mental sovereignty. Here's how to begin. Pick a time of day where you usually reach for stimulation. Morning, afternoon slump, evening, scroll. Set a timer for 1 hour, put the phone in another room, turn off music, no podcasts, no reading, no screens. Just be, breathe, notice, walk, lie down, let your eyes wander. Don't fill the hour. Let it empty you. And when the hour ends, if you've done it sincerely, you'll feel it. A subtle lift, a shift in mental weight, a reconnection with the part of you that still remembers how to think, not just react. Over time, this becomes a ritual, one your body begins to crave, not because you're avoiding the world, but because you're making space to meet it fully. You'll notice that conversations feel richer, that tasks feel clearer, that choices feel more yours, because in the absence of input, your intuition speaks louder. And that's where true mental energy begins, not in consuming more, but in recovering what was always there. So ask yourself, when was the last time I sat with myself, not to fix or improve, but simply to witness what I've been carrying? If the answer is I can't remember, then this hour isn't optional, it's essential, because the deepest clarity doesn't come from a guru, a guide, or a Google search. It comes from you, in a room that says nothing, so that everything inside you finally has room to speak. Sometimes you feel stuck, not in some dramatic, cinematic way. You're still going to work, still eating, still replying to messages, but underneath the routine, there's a quiet inertia. You feel heavy, but not from weight. You feel slow, but not from sleep. You feel fogged, but not from fear. It's as if your mind has stopped moving, and your body is just playing out the script. But what if the fog isn't just inside you? What if part of the problem is what surrounds you? Look around your space. What do you see? The same mug, the same pile of papers, the same position of your lamp, your chair, your laptop. Nothing's wrong, but nothing is new. And the brain, when surrounded by too much sameness, stops paying attention. It goes into autopilot. You stop noticing, and when you stop noticing, you stop being here. But here's the twist. You don't need to move houses. You don't need to buy new things. You need to move one small item. That's it, one object, one angle, one choice that breaks the visual loop your brain has stopped seeing. It might sound silly. What does moving a pen or shifting a book do? But this isn't about the object. It's about disruption. When you change a single element in your environment intentionally, you force the mind to update its map. That book isn't where it was. The photo frame is angled differently. The candle is now on the left, not the right. And your brain, wired for survival, for pattern recognition, notices. Suddenly, the space isn't old anymore. It's new, not by much, but enough. Enough to wake up the part of you that's been drifting. This is called micro-environmental contrast. It's a real cognitive tool. Small changes in space produce measurable increases in attention and awareness. But you don't need the science. You felt it. The freshness of a newly made bed. The relief after cleaning just one corner of your desk. The slight buzz when you move your chair and the view shifts. These aren't chores. They're neural resets. They tell your nervous system, we are not stuck. Movement is still possible. Change, even the smallest kind, is safe. The Stoics taught presence through attention. They believed awareness was a discipline, not a feeling, not a mood, a practice. And what better practice than rearranging what's right in front of you? Because here's the thing, the mind reflects the room. And sometimes rearranging a room is the most grounded way to rearrange a thought. Try it now. Look around you. Choose one thing, anything. A pen, a coaster, a stone, a book. Move it. Just slightly. Just enough to create friction. Just enough to make your eye pause the next time it passes. Then breathe. Let the space settle. Let your body register. This is different. And then notice, you feel different. Not dramatically, but truthfully. This is the power of the micro shift. You're not trying to overhaul your life. You're just sending a signal. I am not passive. I can shape the space around me. Therefore, I can shape my state within me. It's not magic. It's momentum. And once you feel that subtle momentum, that click, that flicker, you start noticing other things that could move. Maybe the coffee cup, maybe the schedule, maybe the story you've been telling yourself. And that's the secret. When you shift one object, you start believing you can shift anything. So the next time you feel trapped inside your own head, don't force yourself to think your way out. Move something, gently, consciously. Let your hands remind your brain, nothing is fixed. And in that movement, your mind follows. Back into motion, back into breath, back into the present, where real clarity begins, not with thinking more, but with noticing what you forgot was even there. Most of the time, we try to think our way out of fog. We journal, we reason, we talk it out. But what if the solution isn't in your head at all? What if clarity, the real kind, begins in the body? When your thoughts feel like molasses, when your focus is scattered like dust, when you can't tell whether you're anxious or just absent, that's not a mindset problem. That's a nervous system signal. And in moments like those, you don't need a mantra. You need sensation. Enter the ice cube. Simple, unimpressive, immediate. Take one. Press it to the inside of your wrist. Hold it there. That's it. No philosophy, no affirmation. Just cold. The first jolt will surprise you, not because of the temperature, but because of what happens next. Your breath changes, your focus sharpens, your awareness snaps to the surface. This is not psychological. This is physiological override. Your wrist, that delicate channel of veins and nerve endings, is a direct line to your brain's threat detection system. And cold, especially sudden cold, sends a clear message. Wake up. Something's happening now. Not later. Not eventually. Now. And in that now, you don't have time to overthink. You don't have space to spiral. You just feel. And that feeling, honest, undeniable, present, cuts through the noise like nothing else. You see, we've been taught to regulate our minds through thoughts, but the mind is only one part of the equation. Your nervous system, that ancient primal system, doesn't respond to logic. It responds to stimulus, and cold is one of the cleanest, fastest, most direct ways to reset it. Not because it fixes your problems, but because it brings you back into the one place where problems can actually be addressed. Presence. This isn't theory. It's used by trauma therapists, by athletes, by meditators, by soldiers. Because cold doesn't ask you to be ready. It doesn't wait for motivation. It simply interrupts the pattern. And in that interruption, you have a chance, a breath, to reset. Now think about your average mental spiral. You feel off. You reach for a screen. You scroll. You overthink. You analyze, and the fog grows thicker. What if instead you stood up, walked to the freezer, grabbed an ice cube, and held it? Just 15 seconds. You don't even need to name what you're feeling. The ice doesn't care. It doesn't need your story. It gives you something your racing thoughts never could, a single point of contact with reality. And sometimes that's all it takes. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." But even the Stoics understood that the body is not separate from the mind. Cold water, harsh wind, hunger, stillness, these were all tools of awakening. To remind the self, I am alive, this is real, and I can choose how I respond. The ice cube is your modern version of that. No hardship, no stoicism is suffering. Just discomfort, controlled, chosen, in service of clarity. It's also a test, a practice in will. Can you hold it through the initial flinch? Can you stay with the sensation instead of fleeing? Because how you do this small thing is how you do so many others. Can you face the cold calmly? Can you sit in discomfort without panic? If you can, then you're not just cooling your wrist. You're training your response system, your window of tolerance, your resilience. One shiver at a time. Here's how to try it. Next time your mind feels dull, scattered, or overwhelmed, go to your freezer, grab an ice cube, hold it against your wrist, or the back of your neck, or your temple. Close your eyes. Don't resist it. Just breathe. Count to 15, or 30, or until it melts slightly. Then notice. What's different? The problem might still be there, but you're not in it anymore. You're beside it, watching it, and that distance is often all you need. This isn't a hack. It's a return to body, to sensation, to this exact second, when thoughts are too loud, when emotions are too slippery, when motivation is nowhere to be found. Let temperature speak, because sometimes the quickest way out of your head is through your skin. You are not alone, even on days when the world feels distant. Even when the city buzzes past you, eyes down, minds elsewhere. Even when you sit in a crowded room and feel like a ghost, you are surrounded, not just by people, but by possibility. Every single person you pass has a story, a storm, a song, and you, with a single sentence, can change the rhythm of that day. Not for them, but for yourself. Because a compliment, when given honestly and freely, isn't just kindness. It's a jolt, a live wire that cuts through the sleep of routine. We are wired for connection, not as a luxury, but as a survival instinct. The nervous system thrives in safety, and safety is often felt in a glance, a gesture, a moment of being seen. When you say, "I love your voice," that color looks powerful on you. There's something calming about your energy. You are doing more than giving. You are anchoring your own presence. You are pulling yourself out of mental isolation, emotional inertia, and habitual disengagement. You are saying, to them and to yourself, "I'm here, you're here," and something beautiful just passed between us. Why does this matter? Because when you're tired, foggy, or disconnected, the default response is internal. You come, retreat. You scroll, you overthink, you try to fix yourself. But the mind often doesn't need fixing, it needs reconnection. And the fastest way to reconnect to life is to recognize life in someone else. Here's what's wild. Your brain rewards you for this. When you give a compliment sincerely, dopamine is released. Oxytocin rises, cortisol falls. Your body softens, your focus sharpens, your presence deepens. You don't just feel better, you become better, more alert, more alive. Not because someone praised you, but because you offered recognition without needing anything back. That in today's world is almost a revolution. You may think, "I'm not that kind of person. I'm not good with strangers." What if they think it's weird? Good. Let it be awkward. Let it be unexpected. That's where the spark lives, in the unexpected warmth. Because everyone is used to being ignored. But almost no one is used to being genuinely acknowledged. And when you break that norm, softly, kindly, you don't just shift their experience. You remind your own system that the world is not made of threats and competition. It's made of people and energy and tiny moments of silent beauty waiting to be named. The Stoics believed in action over theory. Epictetus said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." What is more stoic, more courageous, than speaking truth gently into a stranger's day? Not to please, not to flatter, but to practice presence. To say, "I see the good in you, and I choose to say it." That is philosophy made real. You don't have to be poetic. You don't have to be perfect. A simple, "That jacket is stunning." You have a peaceful presence. The way you helped her, that mattered. And walk away, no follow-up, no awkward linger. Just drop the compliment like a seed and keep moving, because you're not trying to harvest gratitude. You're trying to wake yourself up, to remind yourself you are not an observer. You are a participant, a voice, a presence, a spark. Try this tomorrow. As you move through your day, in a cafe, a crosswalk, a store, look up. Observe people, not as obstacles but as humans. Find one true positive thing to say and say it. Gently, calmly, sincerely. Then breathe and notice the shift, the clarity, the emotional return to aliveness. Giving a compliment is not about being nice. It's about being awake. It's about choosing to let admiration escape your mouth before it dies in your mind. It's about trusting that recognition is medicine, not just for others, but for your own scattered energy. So when the fog hits, when you feel dull and unsure, don't look inward. Look around. See something good. Say it out loud. And let that moment, small, awkward, beautiful, call you back to the world. Where you belong. Where you've always belonged. Fully. Now. There's a moment we all dread. Not chaos, not crisis, but the stillness that turns into paralysis. You sit in front of a task, and nothing moves. Not your hands, not your thoughts. Just inertia. Your body is ready, but your mind is stuck. In the hallway between I should and I can't. It's not laziness, it's not failure. It's a nervous system that's lost its momentum, and the longer you wait to feel ready, the heavier it becomes. Here's the truth. Clarity is not a prerequisite for action. Action is often the birthplace of clarity. And the mind, the beautiful, brilliant analytical mind sometimes just needs a container, a frame, a boundary, a rule that says, you don't have to do everything, just this, just now. That's what the 15-minute speed focus challenge is. A timed agreement between you and your resistance. You set the clock. You choose one task. You begin before you feel prepared. And in that artificial urgency, something ancient awakens. There's a reason this works. The brain has what psychologists call the urgency effect. When a deadline is near, even if it's fake, your cognitive system shifts, distractions fade. The inner critic quiets, priorities sharpen, not because you've suddenly become disciplined, but because your nervous system has been given direction. You've stopped drifting. You've stopped negotiating. You've said, for the next 15 minutes, we are doing this, only this, and your system, hungry for rhythm, responds. It's like lighting a fire in wet wood. The flame doesn't start because everything's dry. It starts because you decided to strike the match, even if it sputters, even if it smokes. That strike, that decision, changes the chemistry of the moment, and suddenly, you're in motion. You're not thinking about the whole mountain. You're climbing the first 15 steps, and often that's all it takes. The Stoics understood this deeply. They spoke not of massive life overhauls, but of disciplined attention to the task at hand. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You don't have to turn this into something grand, just do what's in front of you." The 15-minute challenge is the modern embodiment of that principle. You're not building an empire. You're folding one shirt, writing one paragraph, fixing one email. You're reclaiming the present, one bracket of time at a time. Here's how it works. Identify one task, not 10, not your entire to-do list, just one thing you've been resisting. Set a timer for 15 minutes. Use your phone, your watch, an old-school kitchen clock. Begin. Don't analyze, don't prep, just start. And for those 900 seconds, no checking, no toggling, no perfecting, only engagement. You might be surprised by what happens next. The page that scared you begins to fill. The email you avoided gets written. The cluttered table clears. But more than the outcome, what shifts is your identity. You're no longer the one stuck in hesitation. You're the one in motion, and motion is power. Even if you stop after 15 minutes, you've already won. You've reminded your system that activation is a choice, not a mood. And often, that momentum spills over. The 15 minutes stretch to 30. You get into flow. You rediscover rhythm. But even if they don't, you've proven something essential. You are not at the mercy of your feelings. You can lead them. Some days, energy is hard to access. The fog is thick. The resistance is real. On those days, don't fight the whole war. Win the first skirmish. Set the clock. Choose the task. Begin the count. And when the buzzer sounds, you won't just be closer to your goal. You'll be back in your body, back in the game, back in yourself. So next time your day feels overwhelming, when motivation is nowhere and the mind is full of static, don't wait for the perfect time. Don't wait for inspiration. Set the clock. Give yourself permission to try, imperfectly, briefly, sincerely. Because sometimes 15 minutes of honest effort is more powerful than hours of waiting to feel ready. There's a strange kind of magic in not understanding, in sitting still while a stream of sound flows over you. Unfamiliar, indecipherable, mysterious. You don't know the grammar, you don't know the vocabulary. You have no idea what's being said, and yet something inside you listens, not with comprehension, but with attention. We spend our lives chasing clarity. We want meaning, precision, familiarity. But there's a part of the mind, and the deep ancient part, that doesn't grow through explanation. It grows through mystery. It sharpens when it's stretched, when it leans into something unknown and chooses not to analyze but to feel. That's why this practice works. When you listen to a language you don't understand, your mind stops operating on autopilot. It can't predict. It can't label. It can't skip ahead. it must become curious. Again, and that curiosity, that quiet, humbled focus, it's one of the cleanest forms of mental energy you can access, because it's not thinking, it's listening without armor. Think about how often your day is filled with content you already know how to interpret. The same podcast voices, the same playlist, the same emails, the same internal narration. Your brain gets efficient, but that efficiency has a cost. Dullness. Familiarity is safe, but it doesn't wake you up. What wakes you up is disruption. Not chaotic, not loud, just foreign, just strange enough to make you lean forward. Imagine this. You put on a short clip, someone speaking Icelandic, Arabic, Finnish, Swahili. You don't turn on subtitles. You don't Google translations. You just let the sounds pour in. You notice the cadence, the tone, the inflection. You start to sense emotion, not through the words, but through the energy behind them. And in that moment, your brain becomes a student again, not of language, of presence. This isn't about becoming multilingual. It's about becoming mentally agile. You're training your attention to stay engaged, without the crutch of meaning, and that trains a very rare muscle, pure awareness. You're not listening to learn, you're listening to listen, to be with what is, not what you expect. And that practice carries over into life. You start noticing tone before words. You start sensing mood before logic. You start being with people, not just decoding them, because you've practiced staying present in the unknown. The Stoics might not have spoken multiple languages, but they understood this principle deeply. Epictetus taught, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." But what if the most powerful listening is the kind that doesn't seek to reply at all, that simply receives? There's also humility here, a soft surrender. To listen to something you don't understand is to admit, "I don't know, and that's okay, I'm here anyway." And in a world obsessed with knowing, with being right, fast, clever, that is a radical act. To be still, to not grasp, to let meaning float by without reaching for it. That is peace. And that peace clears mental static like almost nothing else. So here's the practice. Choose a language you've never studied. Japanese, Russian, Yoruba, Navajo, Mongolian. Find a song, a short podcast, a news clip, no subtitles, no prep. Put on your headphones, close your eyes, just listen. Let your brain soften its grip. Let your ears tune in to rhythm, breath, energy. Do this for 5 minutes, or 10, or 2, and then sit in the stillness after. Notice how quiet your inner chatter has become. Notice how alive your senses feel. Notice the calm curiosity lingering in your chest. That's the return. To now. To awareness. To yourself. The mind, when exposed to the unknown, gently, intentionally, becomes not more anxious, but more present. It stops assuming. It starts listening. And in that listening, a kind of clarity emerges that no motivational quote could ever replicate, because it's not borrowed, it's not forced, it's felt deeply, wordlessly. Your mind drifts, not because you're weak, not because you lack willpower, but because your body is idle. You're scrolling with one thumb. Your legs are still. Your spine is slumped. And your fingers, those instruments of expression, haven't moved with intention in hours. You're mentally tired. Because nothing physical is calling your brain to attention. But what if clarity didn't always require stillness? What if, instead, it required patterned movement? Imagine this. You sit at your desk, eyes glazed, focus gone, thoughts floating, and then, without warning, you start tapping. Index, middle, ring, pinky, reverse, thumb, middle twice, pause, repeat. No rhythm from music. No beat to follow. Just a self-invented sequence. And suddenly, you're back. Because this is not fidgeting. This is neural ignition. It's called bilateral stimulation. The practice of engaging both sides of the brain through coordinated motion, Drummers know it. Martial artists train in it. Even therapists use it to calm the nervous system in trauma work. You're not just moving your fingers. You're forcing your brain to track timing, rhythm, and intention in real time. And that real-time presence breaks the mental fog. Most of us live disembodied. We think from the neck up. We treat the body like a chair our mind sits in, but the mind is not separate from the body. It is shaped by it, mirrored in it, regulated through it. And when you move, even slightly, you wake systems that language alone cannot reach. You return to coordination, to contact, to the quiet electricity of being in sync with yourself. The pattern doesn't need to be complex. What matters is that you invent it. It could be, tap each finger once in order, then double tap back in reverse. Pause for 3 seconds. Repeat the same cycle blindfolded. Try it on your opposite hand. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is engagement. Because when your brain has to pay attention to something small and physical, it can't drift into anxiety. It must focus. It must listen. It must stay. This is mindfulness in disguise. Not the kind that asks you to empty your mind, but the kind that fills your hands. The Stoics understood this. They carved stones. They practiced routines. They believed in structure, not for control, but for freedom from chaos. To tap a pattern is to say, I do not need inspiration to act. I need rhythm to return. Try it now. Sit down. Rest your hands. Close your eyes. Invent a sequence with your fingers. Make it just hard enough that you almost mess up. Then repeat. And repeat again. Each repetition brings more clarity. Each beat draws your awareness closer until you realize you're no longer fogged. You're in it. This works because rhythm is primal. Before language, we had drums. Before stories, we had steps. Before thought, we had beat. Your body still remembers. Your nervous system still dances to order. And even in silence, your fingers can summon that order back. When your mind is scattered, when you feel like a passenger in your own body, don't scroll, don't numb, don't wait. Tap, not for fun, but for focus, for structure, for the quiet satisfaction of doing something deliberate and strange and fully yours. Let the table become your drum. Let your fingertips write the rhythm your thoughts have forgotten, because sometimes clarity doesn't rise through thinking. It arrives through movement. And in that tap, that small, steady pulse, you'll remember, I am not lost. I am in rhythm. I can return. Some days you don't need motivation. You need light, not a metaphor, not an idea. Actual light, warm, golden, piercing through shadow, reminding your body what alive feels like. There is something ancient about sunlight. It doesn't speak, but it summons. It doesn't demand, but it restores. And when you step into it, deliberately, with a sentence in your mouth, you awaken a rhythm that goes deeper than any habit tracker ever could. We forget that we are creatures of the sun, that our mood, our focus, even our biology is timed to its presence. Morning light regulates our dopamine. Afternoon rays reset our cortisol. 2 minutes of direct sun can shift the chemical weather inside your brain. And yet, we spend most of our days under ceilings, artificial, fluorescent, filtered. We've replaced ritual with routine. We've forgotten what it means to stand still in the presence of something greater than us. But the sunlight still waits. It pours through your window. It crawls across your floor. It lands softly on your skin, not asking, just offering. And when you meet it with a line of poetry, spoken slowly with presence, you do more than stand in the light. You become part of it. Why poetry? Because a good line of poetry is a shortcut to truth. It carries density, emotion, precision. It condenses what you feel but haven't yet said. And when you speak it aloud, under the sky, not under a roof, the words become real. They enter the air. They echo. They land, not just on the world, but inside your nervous system. Here's the ritual. Step outside, morning if you can, midday if not. Find the light. Let it hit your face, your chest, your arms, bare if possible. Breathe. Not like a technique, just like you're alive. Then speak. One line. Just one. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Let everything happen to you, beauty and terror. Just keep going. I am not afraid of storms, for I am learning how to sail my ship. And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. Whatever line stirs something in you, speak it out loud, into the light. And then, stand still. This isn't performance. It's presence. You're not reciting. You're aligning, bringing the outer light and the inner voice into sync, letting words become a bridge between silence and clarity, between thought and sensation. Even the Stoics had their version of poetry, not rhymes, not verse, but distilled wisdom, brief, sharp, unforgettable. Marcus Aurelius didn't write essays. He wrote lines. You have power over your mind, not outside events. If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. These were not quotes for others. They were reminders for himself, spoken under sun in cold Roman mornings to pull himself into discipline. And if it worked for an emperor, maybe it's worth trying for a moment. Here's what happens in this ritual. The sunlight warms your skin. The words resonate in your throat. The moment sharpens. Suddenly, you're not thinking about deadlines or doubt. You're here, fully, not metaphorically, somatically. And when you walk back inside, you carry that charge with you, not as motivation, as alignment. Try this tomorrow morning, before you scroll, before you sip coffee, before the noise. Step outside. Stand where the light touches your face. Choose a line that remembers you. Speak it, feel it, and then return to your day, to your work, to your breath. Only now, with sunlight in your bloodstream and a sentence in your spine, you are no longer waiting for clarity, you've already become it. Words are not just tools, they are thresholds. Each one is a door into emotion, perception, thought, and the words you use every day become the boundaries of how you live. Most of us speak from habit. We describe our feelings the same way. I'm tired. I'm fine. I'm overwhelmed. The words are familiar, but they're also flat. They flatten complexity. They compress nuance. And slowly, over years, the inner world becomes harder to access. Not because it's vanished, but because we've stopped naming it with any precision. Now imagine this. One morning, you learn a new word. Something unexpected. Maybe it's liminal, the space between no longer and not yet. Maybe it's petrichor, the scent of rain on dry earth. Maybe it's sonder, the sudden realization that every stranger has a story as rich and tangled as your own. You say the word aloud, let it land in your mouth. Then, you use it, in a journal, in a message, in a thought. And for a moment, your mind feels sharper. Not because the word is fancy, but because it's new. New words do something to us. They break the rhythm of unconscious speech. They force the brain to reach, to stretch, to reconnect meaning and sound. It's small, subtle, but powerful, because when you change your vocabulary, you don't just change how you express, you change how you perceive. You see, language is the architecture of consciousness. The way you describe something shapes how you experience it. Call it annoying, and you'll feel resistance. Call it temporary discomfort, and something softens. Call it an invitation to stretch, and suddenly you feel capable. The experience didn't change. Your frame did, and the frame is made of words. The Stoics knew this, even if they didn't speak in linguistic theory. Seneca wrote, No man was ever wise by chance. And wisdom, for them, wasn't just knowing what's true, it was knowing how to speak to oneself in better language, sharper, cleaner, more conscious. So here's the ritual. Every day, or once a week, learn one new word. Not for show, not for performance, for precision. Choose something that stirs you, a word for a state you've felt but never named, a texture, a shade of emotion, a secret shape of thought. Say it aloud, slowly, then use it in a sentence. Not to impress, to integrate. This phase of my life feels liminal, like I'm between chapters. There's a quiet halcyon in the way she walks. This ache isn't pain and it's saudade. And with that one sentence, the fog inside you begins to part. You're not just accessing vocabulary, you're accessing yourself. The part that notices more, feels more, seeks clarity and detail, not drama. And that mental sharpness is what most people chase with caffeine and chaos. You found it through language. This is especially important when you feel dull, when your mind is looping, when your days blend into sameness, because sameness breeds vagueness, and vagueness dulls the nervous system. A new word? That's a spark, a clean cut through repetition. It reminds you, the world is still complex. You are still curious, expression still matters, and over time something beautiful happens. You start listening differently. You start noticing the words others use, the ones that limit them or lift them. You begin to craft your thoughts like sentences that matter. And in doing so, you no longer just react to life. You articulate it with choice, with color, with awareness. So the next time your energy feels low, don't reach for another task. Don't chase another voice. Reach for a word, a new one. Let it find you. Let it color the next sentence you speak, and let that sentence change the shape of your mind from vague to vivid, from passive to present, from ordinary to articulated. There's a part of you that never grew up, not in a sad way, not in an unfinished way, but in a sacred, untouched way. It still lives somewhere, beneath the routines, beneath the roles, beneath the rush. The child version of you, the one who laughed too loud, who asked why 10 times in a row, who cried without apology, who noticed everything. That part hasn't disappeared. It's just been forgotten, buried under to-do lists, dulled by repetition, outshouted by productivity. But if you're quiet enough, if you're still, you can find them again. And when you do, your mind begins to come alive. Memory isn't nostalgia. It's access to something real, to something vivid, to a you who wasn't diluted by roles or filtered by expectation. And when you reconnect with that version, when you consciously revisit a childhood memory, you do more than remember. You reignite. Think back, not to a blurry era, but to a single moment, something small, tangible, textured. The sound of bike wheels against concrete, the smell of your grandfather's coat, the exact pattern on the kitchen floor, the warmth of a sunbeam on your pillow after school. Let it rise, not as a thought, but as a scene. Where were you? What were you wearing? What did the air smell like? Go, slowly. Let the memory rebuild itself inside you and then just sit with it. What happens next might surprise you. Your breath deepens, your jaw softens, your heartbeat calms, because the mind, and when anchored in memory, quite stops racing. It returns, not to the past, but to a deeper version of now. Why does this work? Because childhood memories aren't stored like adult ones. They carry emotional saturation. They are full of firsts, of wonder, of undiluted sensation. And when you revisit them, you wake up dormant parts of the brain tied to curiosity, joy, parts that modern life rarely touches. It's like holding a candle up to the inner wall of a cave you forgot existed, and the light, however small, shows you. I'm still here. I still feel. I still remember how to be present. You're not escaping. You're reintegrating, bringing that spark into your adult body, into your tired routines, into your overstimulated nervous system, because that child in you didn't need coffee to feel alive, didn't need deadlines to feel important, didn't need constant input to be mentally present. They just looked, touched, listened, existed, and so can you. Again. The Stoics spoke of nature often, not just external nature, but human nature, the essential self, untangled from noise. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality, but children don't suffer like that. They feel pain, but they don't stack meaning onto it. They experience the now without building a story around it. And when you revisit that memory on that child, you return to unfiltered perception, not for innocence, but for energy." So here's the practice. Close your eyes. Choose a memory from before you were 10. Don't pick a big one. Pick one real. Something you never told anyone because it didn't seem important, but you still remember it, down to the color of the walls. Then let it rise. Let it live inside you. No judgment. No need to explain it. Just witness and breathe. You'll notice something strange. Afterwards, your day feels different, not because of what changed outside, but because of what reawakened inside. You might hear the birds louder. You might feel your steps more deeply. You might pause before rushing. That's not regression, that's reconnection. You haven't gone back in time. You've pulled forward a part of yourself that was never supposed to be left behind. Mental energy isn't always about optimization. Sometimes it's about remembrance, of wonder, of softness, of slowness, of real, full-bodied presence. And your childhood, not as an era but as a texture, is one of the richest places to find it. You don't need to analyze it. You don't need to heal it. You just need to visit intentionally, gently, regularly, because when you return to a memory that made you feel something, no matter how small, you're not chasing the past. You're reminding the present. This is what aliveness feels like. This is what presence can still be. And that reminder, that soft little flicker in the dark, that's more than nostalgia, that's a map.